Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Vanta, and welcome back for another episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Films. And today I have a rather exciting slash freaky slash kind of mature episode for you guys because we are going to talk about the 50 Shades trilogy. And I'm not going to when I say mature, I'm not gonna go into details of like what the characters do and everything. That's a lot. I'm not doing all that. But to in order to discuss some of the because it is a adult films, not like in that sense, but as in like it's a very like I said, a mature trilogy that regard a lot of intimacy, a lot of just when people love each other a lot. So I'm not gonna go into details about my thoughts on those stuff, but it's just overall my experience watching 50 Shades for the first time. And I think it's fun. I think it's a fun time. So I watched it for the first time this summer. I've never watched it before, which is kind of crazy because it's so popular. This was made in 2015, and then the last one finished in 2018. So about 3 years for 3 movies, which is a pretty good gap. And I've never thought about watching it back then because first of all I was young. Okay, let's not beat around the bush here. I was young, and you're crazy to think that as a child, as a teenage girl in an Asian household, I can watch such films without getting into any kind of trouble. So those two combination was not good. But I knew that this was going around back then. I know that I saw some clips and everything. I remember back when we used to watch TV, because I do believe that the art of watching television is no longer as prominent as it was. But back when, my family would watch television together, and we have specific channels that air American or Western films, like European films and all of that, basically just Western media. They have a specific channel, and so whenever we would stumble upon that channel just to see what films they're airing, and I remember there was a lot of times where it was like Twilight or 50 Shades or anything like that, my parents would be like, no, you guys are not old enough. Like, this is not gonna fly. So, which I'm like, okay, well, that's fair. And now that I live alone and I am of age, I just turned 20 like a month ago. I realized during the summer, I was like, I never watched it before. Let's just see what the hype is about, because I remember the books. We learned about this trilogy in class back in high school, and how the books was selling fast. Like, that was insane how fast the books were selling, and then the amount of money that they get just from selling the book alone. And this was not even like the movies and everything. So in terms of that, when the movies came out, obviously I wasn't in America, I wouldn't know, but I would imagine that it was as crazy as it was when they released the books. And I'm not saying crazy as in a bad way, it's just like really hyped, and really people were really enthusiastic about the films as well as they did with the books. So I was like, yeah, let's give it a watch during the summer. I don't have anything else to do. I work like not even 20 hours a week. I don't have anything else better to do. And so I remember I told you guys in the first episode of this semester that I watched the trilogy so I finished the first one, and then a week later I kind of like dropped it a little bit, and then a week later I revisit the other two of the film, and I finished it all in the span of like 1.5 week. And my roommate heard me screaming through the wall when I was watching this film out of sheer frustration when it comes to Christian Grey. And I'm gonna get into that because I kind of have beef with him. And also, like, spoiler alert for those who haven't watched or read the books. I haven't read the books, I only watched the films. But, if you haven't experienced 50 Shades for yourself, I highly recommend. I feel like it's a canon event. All of us should watch it at least once in our life. It's not one of those movies that is gonna change your life per se, but it's just like, sometimes you kind of not need to, but you should watch films that have made such a big impact on pop culture, because I do believe that 50 Shades have a lot of impact on pop culture even now. Arguably, Twilight probably has one of the most impact when it comes to like fandom and character design. And 50 Shade is basic. I heard somewhere, I don't know how true it is, but apparently it's a fanfic of Edward Cullen in Twilight. So, that kind of correlates. And yeah, if you haven't experienced it, again, I recommend. I wouldn't say highly recommend. I don't think you're going to miss out on way too much if you do, but I think it's a fun time, right? It's not every day that we see 3 installment that are just increasingly sexy and very, very mature. I think like a few years back, Baby Girl is probably the closest that we get to a very sexy and mature film. Maybe I have missed a couple films that are like that, but that is just my opinion because I haven't been watching as much films as I should be. So that's all I have to say. And so let's get into it. So Twilight. Sorry, my bad. I actually, fun fact, I have a Twilight shirt. Sorry, because I feel like 50 Shades and Twilight kind of have similar character arcs and everything, so I kind of mix it up sometimes. But 50 Shades, right? The first movie, classic. That's all I'm gonna say. One word, classic. I think, the first movie had made such an impression on me that the other two, it's just like, that's also how I feel about trilogy or sequels in general. When the first movie was so impactful, and it doesn't have to mean that they're good, right? If the first movie leaves such an impressionable first impression on you, then the rest is just kind of blurry at the back. And I'm not saying the other two was terrible, but because the first film we get introduced to the characters, we get thrown into this world of Christian Grey, and we're like, well, we have no idea who this man is, and why does he is into stuff like this. So it leaves a lot of questions for us, and so I think the first movie made a pretty good point in that, and I don't really have any complaints when it comes to stuff like that. But I do say that it is kind of, I honestly, I feel like Christian Grey is kind of lackluster in a little bit because Jamie Dornan is a great actor, right? I'm not denying that. But it's just something about Christian Grey character that we know that he's very nonchalant and he is very strict when it comes to say that, hey, I don't do a relationship, I don't do any of this. But then his actions sort of show a completely different side, and so it's okay, so if you don't want to do a relationship, then why are you taking her? Well, I get it, it's sort of show that he is a respectful person and that he doesn't just want to treat his quote-unquote submissive like they're his they're only there for the means of sex. He actually wants to show respect to them, which, okay, that's fair. But also at the same time, when it comes to Anastasia, it does feel like he's kind of breaking the rules, which obviously he is because she's the main character, they're the main characters. Obviously that's gonna happen. But it's just you say that you don't want a relationship, and you say that, oh, I shouldn't be close to you, oh, I shouldn't do this, and you do all this for her. I mean, girl, if somebody bought me a MacBook or a laptop and we barely know each other, I would be like, yo, what is, okay, I know that you're rich, I know that you have a bunch of money to spend, but I would be like, so when is the marriage? Because this is a lot, especially as a college student. I know Anastasia was still in college in the first film. I would be like, yo, this is okay, I know that you only want to have this sort of very strictly sex relationship and you don't want anything serious, but this is okay. And he brings her out, takes care of her, and sure, like I said, he could be very respectful, and that's admirable, right? The way that he treats women, and he doesn't just see them as an object. But it's just, I was like, because personally, for me, I would see that as mixed signals. And Anastasia, I think, also feel the same, because how are you pushing her away but at the same time pulling her back in? And yeah, well, and the thing is, for the first movie, that's why I got a little bit of beef with him, and also just the fact that he's really creepy in a lot of the scenes. And then we get his backstory in the two other films. I think they teased it a little bit in the first one, but we really get into it the second and the third one. That's when I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe it's the trauma. He's been through a lot of stuff, right? Like, this man is traumatized and he's using this as a coping mechanism. That's how I interpreted it. And I'm not saying that someone can only use sex or BDSM as a form of coping mechanism. Some people genuinely enjoy that, and that's fair. But for Christian Grey, it just seems like man was really traumatized and he could be really into it. But that is also stemming from the fact that he was groomed into this lifestyle, and that's kind of, yeah, I mean, that's terrible. Like, nobody should go through that. But yeah, and then going back to the thing where I said that I think Christian is kind of creepy in some scene. I remember, I think this was in the second movie when both of them were stopped talking for a while. I think they, sort of broke up because, well, obvious reasons, right? He's very emotionally unavailable, and for good reasons. I'm not saying that. Like I said, he's traumatized, and she just really want to get to know him better, but he seems very reluctant to let her in, which is why they broke up. And so on the second film, they were taking a break, or they broke up. They didn't talk to each other, and all of a sudden, one day Anastasia comes home and he just like was randomly in her room. Like, I remember this really clearly because I was like, why are you here? Like, how did you get in my house? You have a key to my house? I would be freaked out. And they immediately do the deed when she found him there. And I'm like, I thought it was a dream. I genuinely thought that she was dreaming because she misses him so much. But it was not. Like, that was real life. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I don't know about you guys, but if I see a man, and I don't care how attractive he is, could be Gojo Satoru in there, right? I'd be like, how did you get in my house? Like, what are you doing here? Get out. Because that just like gave me the shiver. I was like, ooh, my timbers were shivered. So I was like, and I don't know. That just rubs me off the really wrong way. And then he's just very possessive and like everything, and not in like a good way too. And then I also remember this is one other scene where Anastasia was meeting with her mom, or talking with, I think it was her mom, yeah. And then he just came out of nowhere. Again, came out of nowhere. How did he get her location? I have no idea. Did Share My Location was available back then, or did he just like pin her phone and just like follow her? But I was like creeped out because he was out of nowhere, and it was her mom. And maybe it's the fact that I'm Asian, and if a guy just randomly do that in front of my mom, I would freak the heck out. And my mom would freak the heck out too, because like, who is this guy out of nowhere? And then he was like, yeah, you're not drinking that. You drank too much and everything. And I'm like, I get that they have this thing in the contract where she's not supposed to drink or whatever. But then I saw that, I'm like, you do know that like she's on a break and she's with her mom, right? Like, please do not bring this sort of secretive BDSM dynamic contract that we made together in front of my mom. Like, I would really appreciate if you didn't do that, because that's crazy. So yeah, those two interactions, everything else, that's just the how do you say it? The tip of the iceberg, right? There's so much more stuff that he has done in like the span of these 3 films that I'm like, I would not let it slide. Anastasia, if I was you, I personally would not take that. I would not. You're stronger than me, girl. But yeah, this is literally what goes on my mind whenever I see him. Like, I just feel like he's one of those man that whatever you do, he's gonna be lurking in the shadows, like 5 feet away from you. And I don't, like, okay, I guess that is supposed to be sexy in a way, because it is a mature film, to say that, oh, it's so da da da, when she, he's always there to protect her, and he's so like gentle, but then he can also be really rough in bed, like that's low-key kind of hot. I can see it, but at the same time I actually don't, because I personally think that personal space is very hot. I need my personal space. Thank you. So that's kind of the beef that I have with him. And so, yeah, but obviously that's not to say that a lot of his action weren't stemmed from trauma. So I just think that it's creepy, but he has been through some stuff. I don't blame him for that. Like, I'm like, okay, well, do kind of blame the filmmakers and the film a little bit, just because they keep trying to portray those very possessive actions as something that is attractive, right? Because it's kind of teaching. I know for a fact that there was a lot of young girls and young adult watching the films back then, because, well, that's the targeted audience, and it's kind of teaching them that, hey, it's actually really, really attractive if a guy, no matter whether or not you're attracted to him, if he randomly shows up and he stops you from drinking even though you want to drink, and he controls your every move, whether or not you should eat and everything, because that is in a contract. First of all, that's kind of crazy to me, but whatever. That is acceptable. And you can argue with me and say that, well, that's not what the film is trying to portray. That's the message that I got. Because if you're gonna make a mature film, and I get that they also, one of the things that they made really clear with Christian's character is that he's very big on consent, right? Okay, well, it's a good thing that, consent is a great thing, but at the same time, you're also showing him doing all this side stuff that Anastasia didn't really ask for, and I get it. Like sometimes I think there's a very fine line between doing something that your partner didn't ask for, and it's maybe something like, oh, I got you this chocolate because I remember that you really like this brand of chocolate, and I bought it for you anyway because it reminded me of you. That's cute. Not, oh, hey, like, I miss you so much. I show it in the middle of the night in your room. And what do you mean? How did I get in your house? Don't ask me such questions. Those are very, very two different things when it comes to doing something that your partner didn't ask. But yeah, like I said, it's a very fine line. And the movie is kind of tiptoeing on that line and trying to cross it a lot of the times, which is why, like I said, that's why I find Christian Grey's character kind of creepy in that sense. But I don't think he ever forced Anastasia to do anything. I think oh wait, no, he did. Yeah. Okay, now I just remember. I think the first or the third movie or something, he was they were experimenting with his BDSM sort of lifestyle, and she did something to her, and she was like, "Why would you do that? That hurts," and everything. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, that kind of sucks. But yeah, so I don't know. I think it's just it's a very risky thing to show on camera, especially when we know that the character is very he has a lot of lore, right? A lot of trauma, a lot of things happen in his past that could be explained for it, but I don't think that it should be used as an excuse, because like I said, I kind of forgot that there was this one moment within the trilogy where he hit her, but not hit as in like a slap in the face. He hit her backside, and she was like, that actually really hurts, and why would you do that to me? And actually, like, I'm glad that they showed that, because it's sort of to say that, hey, sometimes it's okay for you to speak up when your partner does something to you that you don't want. And it's great. I mean, it's good to see that a character, Anastasia, has some backbone in this. But yeah, and I'm not saying when I say some, it's because some of her decision, I do feel like it's because, girl, I don't know how you didn't run when he showed up in your room in the middle of the night, because that's kind of for me, right? I get that it's fiction, but it's like, okay, like, what are you trying to tell us? And yeah, another critique that I have of the film that I find an issue all throughout the three films was the music choice. And I'm gonna say this as somebody who doesn't study music. I took a music course, I think 2 semesters ago, and we had to write like a final paper. When I tell you I could not like I was struggling to finish those 2 pages just because I don't know how to describe music. Like I can't find the adjective for it. I don't know nothing about music. I listen to it, right? And I also don't study soundtrack and scores in film. That's not a area that I am an expert at yet. But I will say this. I understand that this was made in the late 2010s. So a lot of the things back then are obviously very, like, not very, but outdated. And if we're gonna watch this, if I watch this, well, I don't know why I say if. I already did. I watched it in 2025. Looking back, I am gonna find stuff that are outdated, but I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. It's just the music. I can feel how different it is. The usage of music and score and soundtrack in the late 2010s compared to now. Because if you compare, those sexy scene from 50 Shades to Baby Girl that was, I think, 2022, 2024, you would see a very big difference in the way that you use music. Because a lot of the music well, not a lot, all of the music in the 50 Shades were all, first of all, original songs. They're great, right? But it's also like all of them are songs. None of them are score. They're all, songs with lyrics. And when I watched it, I put the subtitles on, so they even have the subtitles of the songs and everything. And a lot of those songs, look, I'm not saying the songs are bad, but I do feel like a lot of them, the genre was not what I particularly would want to see in a mature film. And yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's a very, when I watched, it was kind of bizarre to hear all of the songs with, all lyrics and everything. And I'm not saying that never happened ever before. There's so many songs, like needle drops in films. But it's just that you have this image, right? Okay, so close your eyes, image this. You have this scene of two characters getting steamy. It's intimate, they're undressing each other skin on skin, and it's like so heated, and all of a sudden blaring in your ear is "Love Me Like You Do, la la, love me like you do," and I'm like, okay, well, I don't think that song is that sexy to put it in. Like, I kind of see it, but at the same time, to my liking, if I was the director, if I was given 50 Shade and they tell me to direct it, and we have so many sexy scenes in 50 Shades, right? That's like one of the main things that make 50 Shades. And if they tell me, okay, you have to direct these very intimate moments, how are you gonna do it? I'm gonna be like, okay, first of all, I'm gonna get rid of the soundtrack, and I don't want anything that has lyrics in it, because what do I want? I want the audience to look at the characters, because that's the whole point of 50 Shades. Is like two characters that sort of express their love and their desire. And for Christian Grey is this very secretive desire of him to be dominated over somebody. And we want to have the audience full focus on that, because that's the whole entire point. Like, these three trilogy revolves around people's sex life, and I don't want any lyrics to take that away from them. I want them to focus on it and be like, okay, wow, I would want an original score. I would want a very slow, sultry R&B score in the background, maybe some faint lyrics, and that's about it. Nothing coherent that people can like make out, but it's like so it's gonna be very faint and slow in the background. And what I would want is to put actual audio when we film those intimate moments into it, that's gonna add more heat. That's gonna add more realism. That's gonna add the effect to the audience. Like, whoa, it feels like we're interrupting something. Because that's what I was expecting from 50 Shades. I was expecting that they're gonna have these intimate moments that feels like we are in the middle. We are interrupting them. We're like in the middle of something, and I would do it that way just to ensure that effect. And I think the only scene that were able to do this in the 50 Shades was the scene where, I think in the third movie, when both of them, when they're like in this villa for a vacation, and both of them just like went out to the kitchen to get, I think Anastasia went to get some ice cream, and they just start, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. And I remember that was the only scene that I would say didn't have. Well, the soundtrack was still there. The soundtrack was still there, but it was very effective. That was the only scene out of all this trilogy that I would say that I was like, ooh, okay. Like, it took you 3 whole movies to bring me one moment like this. But yeah, and I'm not okay. I know that you guys listening to this will be like, yo, why is she like so invested in like making this, like, is she like weird? Like, okay, I am saying this purely out of enthusiasm for mature scenes in movies, because I'm not saying that I'm such a freak that I need more of them in Hollywood, but it's just that with 50 Shades, I had a lot of expectation that it was gonna be super steamy and hot, and which it is. I'm not denying that it is, but I feel like if anybody else was given an opportunity to do this movie again, I think that it could exceed those potential in the books. I truly believe that, because the soundtrack just takes everything away from those moments to me, because like I said, it revolves around Christian Grey and his tendency and sort of this BDSM lifestyle that I would assume that not a lot of people know. So if you're going to introduce that to people, don't take the intimacy that they want to see away from them. People watch it because they want the intimacy. People watch it because they want the heat. They want the steam. They want to see people on screen do stuff to each other. So I do apologize. I feel like I'm going a little bit overboard with the terminology and stuff like this. But yeah, because I think in my episode of Baby Girl, I did say that it was very, like, I do feel like a lot of the scenes were very well done. The tension that they built was spectacular. And while I'm not going to deny that 50 Shades have tension, it really is, compared to other stuff that I've seen in regard of building tension, right? It's not that level yet. And I don't know if it's because of it's an adaptation, or the fact that I didn't read the books or anything. It's just that I watch it and I'm like, okay, well, I do feel like they could do a little bit more with these scenes, because like I said, if you were to give those scenes to me and ask me how I would direct it, I'm gonna give you the sexiest scene I've ever seen in your life. Okay, do not take that out of context. But I mean to say, I'm gonna put, have you listened to The Weeknd's instrumental for his albums? Okay, give me 1 second. Let me look at the album that I'm talking about, and then I'll get back to you. Yeah, so I found it. The album of The Weeknd that I'm talking about is House of Balloons. This entire album, I'm telling you right now, if you haven't listened, go to Spotify. I quite literally have all of his songs on this album in my playlist. It is so sensual. Like, I cannot believe how insane it is that you're able, like, The Weeknd was able to draw this very vivid and intimate scenes in your head through lyrics and songs and instrumental. And I was like, can you imagine? Like, and this was in 2011, right? And then 50 Shades was made in 2015, the first one. So I imagine during those 4 years, it's gonna be pre-production. They could have had any of his instrumental of this album in there. They didn't do it, and I feel like, because they did have The Weeknd on one of the soundtrack, which is like Earned It. But Earned It was fine, right? But compared to any of the other songs that he have in House of Balloons, if you put just the instrumental. You don't even have to care about the lyrics, and the lyrics are crazy too. But just the instrumental, if you put it in any like scenes to raise tension, you are gonna have an insane scene that audience gonna watch and be like, yo, I don't think I should be watching this. Like, it feels kind of illegal to watch this with, I don't know, like my friends, because this is really, really intimate. But yeah, that's also one of my biggest critique, because I be seeing the, you know, the intimate scene, and I'm like, oh, okay, you know, that's the entire the film. I don't really have a lot of comment. And then the song and the lyrics just blare in my ears, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't think it was giving the effect that they thought it was giving, because they have a good playlist, right? They have a good soundtrack with great artists. They even have Beyonce on one of the songs, you know, The Weeknd. And I think, yeah, Zayn and Taylor Swift was also on one of the songs. But it's just like, okay, well, that's nice. But at the same time, like, I was hoping for something that is more, you know? And I'm only like I said, I'm gonna emphasize this. I am only wanting to see more of it just because I know that is what the theme of the 3 films are. What is the theme? The theme is to explore your deepest, darkest desires when it comes to sexual intercourse and intimacy. What is your deepest, darkest secrets in intimacy, you know? And if you're gonna build trilogies based on that, then you really need to make your intimacy scenes really good, especially if you build up the premise of the 3 films like that. Because, you know, the first film, we get introduced to Christian Grey, and he's like, okay, I really like you. Would you like to be my submissive? And we're like, what the heck is a submissive? And then, you know, they have the contract, and we have sort of be like, oh, so this is what it is. So it's intimacy, but in a very, very different genre and category from what we are used to. And so if you're going to introduce a completely new concept to people, then you really need to put in a lot of effort for your intimacy scene. That is one of my only critique regarding the music. Everything else, I do think that is a very it's entertaining, right? It's something different. I wouldn't say that I watch this kind of film every single film. Like that would be kind of I would question the type of person I am if I do watch something like this every single day. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just like, And also, I'm not going to admit that to you guys, even if I do. Oh, that's wrong. I don't know why I put that on. Anyways, yeah, I don't. It's something different. I would, if you guys haven't watched it, again, I would recommend. It's like one of those films that get referenced a lot. I don't think it's like referenced a lot now, but it's something that has a lot of impact on pop culture back then, and I would argue like it still kind of have it now, because like I said, the rumor of it being a fanfic, I don't know entirely sure if that's true or not, but I would imagine it has a lot of influence and impact on fan fiction. Because I'm gonna say this right now and arrest me for saying it, but I still read fan fiction. I think that it's a very great media for people to be creative, because they can write whatever they want because it's fan fiction. Especially if somebody is writing from a media that is already established, it doesn't even need to be canon. It's just, you know, people just want to write whatever they want, and I think that's fantastic. I think that's a great way to express creativity, and it's a very underrated way. And I think a lot of people, when they heard of fan fiction, they sort of frown and they're like, that's weird. Like, why would you talk about that, or why would you do such a thing? But I would argue that to write something that is not existed before that, like, that is a work of art. And I know that people are like, you're comparing fanfiction to a work of art. Hey, that is still a creative work that people use their brain and their creativity to write. So yes, I would argue that it's one of the most underrated art form that we don't really appreciate as much. And so, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if 50 Shade was a fan fiction of Twilight. Like, I kind of see Edward and Christian Grey sharing quite a few sort of like traits. They're both pretty possessive, and they're very like quote unquote nonchalant, cold, but and kind of emotionally unavailable, which is kind of crazy because looking back at a lot of the old films that the old romance film, a lot of the main characters are just very like they're so cold, you know, and emotional. Like I said, I think we are in a way sort of influenced into finding emotionally unavailable men to be so attractive. And I'm not saying that it's all TV and film and media's fault, but you know, when you have a lot of films and material that is showing those men as the main subject of interest, then yes, I would say that a lot of us are influenced in a way. And yeah, because you know, I grew up loving Edward. I can't say the same of Christian, but if I watch Twilight back now, I'm probably gonna be like, yeah, that's yeah, I mean, I kind of see why I'm attracted to him, but at the same time, like, that man is just very distant. And yeah, I just think that we need more romance film in which the especially the male characters, that they don't conceal their emotions and what they're feeling. Because I kind of hate when at the end of like a rom-com or like a romance or a mature movie, the man all of a sudden goes, I've loved you so much, I've loved you since forever. And it's like, why didn't you show it before? Like, that it's not adding up. So yeah, I don't know. I think that men like Christian Grey, they need therapy. I'm not saying that because only of his trauma. Obviously, with that trauma, he needs therapy, period. I don't remember if he had one in the films, but therapy is great, guys. Yeah, so Christian Grey, he needs therapy. And yeah, and I'm not saying that to make fun of him at all. I'm saying because he's using sex as a way to sort of take control of what he's been through. And while that is his choice of coping mechanism, I also wouldn't say that it's like the healthiest, because he's still not talking about his feelings. He's just releasing it in a completely different way, pun intended. And so I don't know. I think we romanticize that a lot, that, you know, men who doesn't talk about their feelings and men who are very closed off are very hot and sexy. And I don't think that it should be like that, because not only that it's teaching us to always aim for men who might be interested in us but they have no intention of opening up, and it tells us just to keep chasing them, but it also tells men to, you know, you don't have to always say what's on your mind. And obviously that's true, like some stuff you don't have to, but if you do it all the time and people don't know what you're thinking and you sort of drive people away because of that, then it's not, I wouldn't say it's the healthiest. Yeah, well, that's my thoughts. But yeah, I'm just like so used to seeing cold and distant men in so many media, and I'm like, whoa, that's actually so hot. But then I think to myself, right, like realistically, if I'm talking to a guy that is like that and he keeps refusing to talk about his feelings, for example, like right? I don't know if this has happened before, I don't think so. But if I talk to a guy and I'm like, how was your day? And he's like, normal. I'd be like, I might as well talk to my knee because at least then it gives me some sort of reaction. But okay. Yeah, well, that's all my thoughts for 50 Shades of Grey. Again, it's a fun watch. Don't take it too seriously. I only have beef with Christian Grey and the music, but that's, that's about it. I hope you guys enjoy this episode and hopefully catch you guys in the next one. All right, bye guys.